Hey guys, so like you said, I'm Hannah. I teach Spanish 1 and 2 currently. And just like you guys, I probably have taught in every which way that you possibly can this past school year. I had in-person, virtual, hybrid, synchronous, and asynchronous classes every single day in every single class period. So all the resources that I'm going to show today are things I've used in all of those settings. So I'm hoping that no matter what the school year looks like next year, that you find some things that you guys can incorporate. Just out of curiosity, do you guys know what your school year is going to look like next year? Do you know if you're teaching normal in-person school? And you can just put in the chat box or unmute. Okay, so you're going to be, oh, you've been in person. You're going to be completely in person. Okay, cool. That's what our plan is too right now. So hopefully everything keeps going along that way. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see some of the resources I have. At any point, let's see, there's something else. You're all in person too. Okay, so in person. If you guys at any point just want to type in that chat box if you have questions, or if you want me to pause and talk about something more, just let me know about that. So just want to check, are you guys good? Can you see my screen? Perfect. Okay, so for the Pulsera project materials, I've been doing Pulsera sales for 5 years now. And for 4 of those years, I have been tying it in with global citizenship education. And that has really changed the way that my classroom has functioned. And I also feel like the effectiveness of my Pulsera sales. It's been really cool using the Pulsera project tied in with global citizenship, because it really gives your students a purpose to learning. It's not just, I'm learning this because I signed up for the class my parents made me. They actually see a world beyond it, and they see usefulness in what they're doing. So I love using the Pulsar project for that reason, tying it in. Hopefully you guys have explored some of these resources, but every time you host a sale, sounds like you guys have definitely hosted before. You get access to these materials, and there's just so much on here. A lot of people seem to use a sale just as a sale, as a fundraiser, or for their honor societies. But there's so much more you can do inside the classroom. And if you just treat it as a sale, there's so much more some that your kids miss out on if you don't incorporate it into the class materials as well. So how I do this, I actually incorporate Pulsar project throughout the entire year. My sale comes towards the end of the year, usually in April, but throughout the whole year, I'm doing different activities. And I wanted to show you some of them, get you active in some of them, and then also show you other resources as well. So at the beginning of the year, in August, September time, oh, are you still seeing a black screen? You're good now? No, you still have black screen.
I see it fine. Maybe try stopping and restarting sharing your screen real fast.
Okay, let me check. Can you see it now? Are we good? Or no? Can you guys see it?
Yeah, I can see it fine.
Okay, I think she logged out and it's gonna log back in. So hopefully we're good to go there.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna keep talking. So, oh, here she is again. We'll see. Hopefully, Karen, you can see now.
Oh yeah, that's a good suggestion too, is I can send that link to those materials.
Okay.
I can drop that.
You got that? You got that, Chris? Okay. Yay, fantastic. Okay, how I start this out with my students is I love to kind of see what their background knowledge is, and I also use an activity as a pre-assessment. And don't tell my students that's what it is, but that's what I'm doing. I have a little Pear Deck that I created, and this is something that can be copied and duplicated in your classroom as well. It's open on Pear Deck. So I do want you guys, either on your phone or on your computer, to open up a new tab and head over to joinpd.com. And then you can see the code on your screen. It's easier on a computer than a phone. A phone just gets so tiny sometimes. It's a little bit easier on the computer. I got one of you. And Pear Deck is a really cool resource for teachers. Something that's really neat about it is that in the moment, it is completely anonymous. So my students don't get nervous to answer questions because none of their classmates can see, oh my gosh, you got that wrong. But when I go back from the teacher end, I can actually see what students said. So it works as a really good way for tracking my students and seeing what they're able to do. So it looks like I got you guys in. And here's the first question I give to them in August. And I ask my students, try to pique their interest in something. I teach high schoolers, so they are all looking for jobs and want to get hired. So I found this survey about what are employers looking for in their job candidates. And these are the top things that they mentioned: strong communication skills, awareness of your own culture's influence over decisions, works well in diverse teams, adapts easily to different cultural settings, and demonstrates respect for others. So what I want you to do on your screen is I just want you to draw on it. Whatever you think is number one, the most important, just put a number one next to it. If you think it's the least important of the top five, put it as a 5. Now I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds to a minute to answer those questions, see what you think. And I challenge my students to see if anyone can get all 5 of them correct. And you have options as a teacher. You can show all of them real time, or I typically lock my screens after a set amount of time, because otherwise my kids are drawing all sorts of pictures all over their screens for however long they have fun with that. But it's nice, they think that they're anonymous, but they're not really anonymous. So if you need to track them down, you can on Pear Deck. So it looks like we have the demonstrating respect is pretty unanimous. It's one of the top things. We have the adapting to cultural settings is down lower for most people. Right in the middle is the works well in diverse teams. And then we have awareness of own culture's influence is across the board for that one. We have a couple people say it's towards the bottom, a couple people say it's towards the top. So I am going to show you what the actual answer is. So here is what really was of interest to employers. And so the number one most important thing is demonstrating respect for others. This graph, you can zoom in on it if you need to, so you can see it a little bit bigger. But it splits it by 2 different types of skills: hard skills and soft skills. So hard skills are the actual qualifications, criteria you need to accomplish the job. Soft skills are more the kind of personality things that you need to do it well. So number one is demonstrating respect for others. Building trust is number two. I usually don't put this on here for my students just because that's something that is their choice. That's something that's ingrained in them. And then working well in diverse teams is number two. And I always pause here and I ask my students, what do you think? Does this surprise you that before qualifications for the job ever pops up, over here we have those qualifications related to the job, demonstrating respect for others and working in diverse teams is there. So my students think about it for a while and they usually do decide that, yeah, that does make sense. I've never thought about it that way, but that does make sense. Adapting easily to different cultural settings was next, then strong communication skills and awareness of culture. Did anyone get all five right? No. I think maybe each year I have one or two students who just luck out and happen to get it right. But the coolest thing about this is that as language teachers, we are teaching all of these skills. So we are teaching the most marketable skills that employers want to our students, and it just makes me really, really proud to get to be a language teacher. So my next question that I ask them starts kind of tying it back to the direction I'm going to take. So I ask my students, if someone were to come up to you on the street and ask you, are you a global citizen? What would you say? And this is a multiple choice question. Yes, no, or I don't know. And again, I highly recommend locking your student's screen afterwards, or else they will just constantly be changing their answers, because apparently watching bars move across the screen is the most entertaining thing ever. It's just what they do. So as anticipated, most teachers are going to say, yeah, I am. But if you think about what your students would probably say to this, almost all of my students say no, or they say, I don't know. So again, this is what I'm using to track my students. I check this out at the beginning and I mark off to have some data behind it so I can show growth in my students. My next question is, in your opinion, what makes someone a global citizen? So if you said, yes, you are one, why? What do you possess? Or if you say, no, I'm not one, what are you missing that, that prevents you from being a global citizen? So this one's a typing question. I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds to type out why you think you are a global citizen or you're not. And I do let my students say, I don't know here. If they just have absolutely no clue, they can say, I don't have any idea. Oh, sorry, I locked it too soon. So you guys have much more eloquent descriptions than my teenagers typically give. So anyone who acknowledges that the things that unite humanity are much greater than the things that divide it. Understanding the needs of other people and working to change problems, demonstrating a mindset that's open to learning and understanding. You guys are pretty much right on the dot. For my students, what is really interesting to see that they do, they typically say that a global citizen is someone with a passport, or it is someone who has dual citizenship, or they'll say a person who travels a lot. So the next part is showing what exactly is a global citizen. So let's see, I'm changing over. Can you still see my screen? Because I changed it over just a little bit. Okay, so what exactly is a global citizen? It's someone who's an active participant in projects that address global issues with the two main elements of having a global consciousness and possessing global competencies. So you can probably see where I'm headed now, tying in the Pulsera project with this. So My first year of teaching, I felt like I was doing a lot where my students were learning things, but they weren't active participants. I was just telling them the things that they were supposed to learn, or they were just passively learning them. They weren't actively doing them. So being an active participant, having this global consciousness of being aware of the world around them, and then the global competencies. So what exactly are these global competencies? And this is where I focus with my Pulsera sale. So for global competencies, the cool thing is it's these things. It's the skills that we're already teaching that are the most desirable by employers. They're just broken down in a slightly different way. So the first global competency is recognition. So students are able to recognize that their culture impacts and influences their decisions and their beliefs, which means other people's culture influences their decisions and their beliefs. So no one's wrong. Their culture just influences them in a different way. Then there's the investigation, which is actively seeking out sources, not just about your own community, about the world as a whole. Communication is something we do a lot in our language classes. We have our communication in English, in Spanish, and an important part that I emphasize here is listening. Communication is just not all about you talking. It's about listening and learning how to be an advocate as well. And then the last part is action. So actually doing something about it. Like I said, I felt like before I started doing the Pulsera project, I was doing probably the first three: recognition, investigation, communication. But again, it was very passive. It was just, okay, you should recognize this, not giving them a chance to recognize. Same thing with investigation. I was doing all of the research for them, presenting it to them, and not giving them turns to actively investigate for themselves. Communication, we were doing a lot of. In action, I pretty much was not doing any of before the Pulsera project. So throughout the year, what this looks like for me, all year long, I am including the global competencies. It works out really well that we happen to have 3 units in our first semester. So each unit also ties in with recognition, investigation, communication. And then the second semester, we spend building up to action. So it works out really well for us. But all year long, we're doing global competencies. Then whatever unit the Pulsera sale falls in for us, depending on when our admin gives us permission to do it, it can fall during different chapters. So that entire unit is focused in on learning about the artistas and learning about the culture. And then the week of the sale, we have a global citizenship scavenger hunt. And the final thing, we wrap it up with reflection, because I always feel like it's important for my students to reflect on what they're doing. So I'm going to kind of pause there and see if you have any questions before I start showing you the actual activities. Let's see if I can get this chat box. There's something in the chat box. And yes, I can give you the access to the screen that I'm about to see. Chris, do you have the link that you can share for that one? Or did you put a file already?
I will get it.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving on and show you what exactly I did with this. Because I am doing this throughout my entire year. One of my favorite things to do is I use the Pulsera project for teaching colors. It is fantastic for colors. There is a series called Las Pulseras que hace mamá, and it is probably intended for the younger kids, but I use it with my high schoolers and they enjoy it too. All the colors are embedded into that video, so that is how I introduce the colors. But then it's part of that recognition of the culture. To be a global citizen, instead of just having my students look around the room and saying the pencil is yellow, the book is red, I have them look at the pulseras and they describe the pulseras. The guitar is orange, the flowers are multicolor, whatever they want to say. But we base it on actual culturally authentic resources. I use it to teach compound sentences. So when my students are making compound sentences, they do it through the Pulsera project. I teach it through that. Adjective agreement goes through the Pulsera project. So I want to show you, and this is linked, everything should be open so you can access it. But so in my unit packet this year, when my students were taking notes, And Chris just put it in the chat box. So this is part of what my unit packet looked like this year. And it is super simple. It's literally just boxes. And for compound sentences, I had my students come up with a specific pulsera they wanted to write about, and they had to come up with 2 phrases to describe it. So they would look here. Pikachu was always a very, very popular one with my classes. So the students looked at Pikachu, and you can see in my example, the student wrote, La pulsera es Pikachu. Pikachu es amarillo. And this is combining our colors. This is combining adjective agreement. And then we eventually worked on putting those sentences together. La pulsera que es Pikachu es amarillo. And that's something even at a very, very basic Spanish level that's building towards those AP skills. Que is that conjunction used in Spanish so much. And so it's really nice embedding that even in my lower levels. Then students were able to start working on their own. Las pulseras son flores, las pulseras son multicolores. And then they combined it. Las pulseras que son flores son multicolores. Super, super simple activity. It's something I was already doing in my classroom. I just changed it to be, to use the Pulsera project with it. I think that's a big thing for me, is that I didn't have any extra time. And this past school year, everything took so much longer than it did in a normal school year. So I really had to use my time wisely and combine as much into one as possible. So that worked really well for me. And then their quiz, I basically reused the same thing on their quiz, and my kids really had a fun time where on their quiz, I gave them colored pencils. Well, actually they had to use their own colored pencils because we couldn't share anything last year. But they had colored pencils, and they got to design their own pulsera for the quiz, and then they had to write about it. And I gave them some set things that they had to say. They had to use the word que, they had to use the word I, and then they had to use a conjugation of ser and tener to describe their pulsera. And that just ensured that, one, they knew how to use those, and it also encouraged variety in their writing. Otherwise, they're just gonna say the same thing for every single sentence. But you can see, I had a student, la pulsera tiene una jirafa que es amarillo y café. Las pulseras son coloridas. En la pulsera hay una jirafa. La pulsera representa mi animal favorito. So there's errors in it, but they're conveying their point, and they're having fun with it at the same time. And it's also something that's connecting them with a person a world away, because they're doing the same thing. They're designing a pulsera just like someone in Nicaragua or Guatemala has done. And it really helps them connect more with the project when they do the same thing that the artists have done. So those are just kind of some examples of how I'm including that. Even when I'm not doing the Pulsera project, it's included in my curriculum. As I get closer to the sale, the unit of the sale, I love using, I start teaching about the culture through the products, practices, and perspectives. And if you go on the Spanish materials site, and I'll kind of click through this, at the very bottom, you can see the distance learning activities. And I did use them for distance learning. They were actually my curriculum last year, or the previous year. But I've used them in every way. I have used them as homework assignments. I have used them this past school year. They were my bell ringers, because we weren't allowed to give homework outside of class because everything was homework outside of class. So they were my bell ringers. But these are just quick little activities that are already pre-made for you guys. Any chance, are you Google Classroom districts? Do you guys use Google Classroom? So this will be great for you. They are already set up. You click on it and it just says make a copy, and it will automatically generate a copy for you, and everything you need is embedded right in here. Let's see. Oh, Chris, look at the chat box to see what Elizabeth said. That's a fun idea. You could do it, definitely do it in your classroom. I would have liked the idea. I would have liked to do that last year. So all the activities are just embedded right in here. You have the videos in here, and it gets your students thinking. So you have the perspectives, you have the different products, and every single thing takes you back to culture. It takes about 15 minutes to complete it. But you can see, so for products, you go to wordreference.com, you look up what these different words mean. They're things that you'd see during a Pulsera sale that my kids don't necessarily know. And then I have a list. What are 3 reasons that people purchase and wear pulseras in the US? So this is making these comparisons between our culture and the culture abroad. So they're listing different reasons they wear pulseras, and then they watch this video. It is embedded into the link for them. And then based on the video, what are 3 purposes of pulseras in Nicaragua? Because that's completely different than why people wear pulseras in the US. Usually my students say things like, oh, I have pulseras to represent a cause, or I don't know if it's just an Alabama thing or if your kids went through the whole scrunchie phase as well. And so we had all the scrunchies, everyone was wearing scrunchies. So for fads. So kids will mention those sorts of things here, but then they realize, okay, in Nicaragua, when someone sees a pulsera, that represents their house, that represents their child's education. And it's really cool getting them to think about what are some of these other mindsets, this recognition of perspectives, that the way we perceive a pulsera in the US is different than how it's perceived abroad in different countries. So there are 6 different activities for these. There's actually different ones because I teach Spanish 1 and 2. So I use the top row for my Spanish 1 classes. And then the bottom row is specifically related to an artist. So my Spanish 2 students go a little bit deeper and they learn about one specific artist. I love using the Yeoman video because it talks about how would you use money. Again, this is a perspective. How would you use $2,400 if that's all you made in a year? Then they watch about how he used his to make a chicken coop and raise chickens, and just kind of gain these perspectives. Do they think they get to give their opinion? Do you think that this is a good idea? Why or why not? And all of this is editable. So you can change it if you don't want your students writing in English, you can change it and say that you can put these questions in Spanish or anything that you need to do here. But I use those throughout the entire unit. The last thing I do before my sale starts, so usually about the Thursday or Friday, the week before my sale, is the most important part for me and what I feel like has helped my sale grow the most. And that is connecting my students to a specific artist. You might be familiar with the artist website. It looks like this, where basically every bracelet when it's signed, you can go and find your specific artist and learn about them. I've found that almost every single artist is on here. It's not very often when we see one that doesn't have an interview on here. And these are authentic resources in the target language that your students can navigate. It has videos where you can see where the person lives, the questions that they were asked. You can listen to the interview, the bracelets that they make, and then it has an interactive map at the bottom as well. And what group, if they're a part of a group, it has information about that. For me, the best part about these interviews is that they are set up so the information towards the top is a lot easier to read. And basically my students can just read until they can't read anymore. It gets a little bit more challenging as they go on. There's some more phrases like this he aprendido that they might not know, or estaría, and just salgan adelante, just phrases like that get a little bit more challenging. So it's nice for all levels. If you are an upper level teacher, you can incorporate this as well. My students are connected to a specific artist and they serve as an advocate for that artist. I give them a blank poster and I have them do their work for me because I also need to advertise my Pulsera sale to the school. So I actually have them design the posters for me, and then we print them out and the students are allowed to go around the school and pin up their poster around the school to advocate for their artists. And this changes for me every single year. I have this, like I said, I don't just take time and just do Pulsera stuff. I incorporate this into what I'm already doing. So this past school year, our Pulsera sale happened during a travel unit where we had a big focus on describing things with Sarah and a star. So you'll see that in this poster that they made, there's a lot of Sarah and a star, having to describe where the artist is in the video, having to describe who their family is, these different activities, but I change it every year. It's never the same thing twice. And in the end, it ends up looking like this. So you can kind of see that sample. This is an example from last year. Because we could not share resources, they had to take pictures of this. Normally I have them take pictures of their physical Pulsera. One thing that worked super well for me this year that I was not intending on going so well was I told my students they had an option. They can either buy a Pulsera right then and keep it and do their research on the actual bracelet that they bought, or they could take a Pulsera from my borrow pile, and they just had to return the Pulsera at the end of the period. And I would say probably 75% of my students wanted to keep the bracelet, so they bought it. And it worked out really well because I wasn't intending on selling that many Pulseras that way, but it worked out for me. I have a second one too, just slightly different questions, but the same idea. And this is for my Spanish 2 class. So you'll see that there's a lot more preterite versus imperfect because that's the unit that they were on when the Pulsera project hit. And I do take this up as a project grade, but it's actually the study guide for whatever test they are doing as well. So I'm kind of accomplishing a billion tasks at the same time, incorporating Pulsera project, doing a little project, and then also reviewing for an upcoming test all at the same time with this resource. So then also one thing I wanted to show you guys, if you have students who are at home this coming year, something that I did for my virtual students, or even if you have a kid who's absent, again, you have access to this, you can use it. I tried to mimic everything. If I dumped out Pulseras on a desk and let them pick out a Pulsera for my in-person students, my virtual at-home students did the exact same thing. So I literally just took a picture of one of my student desks, I took a picture of a bunch of Pulseras, and they could navigate and figure out which Pulsera they wanted in the exact same way as my other students. So if they liked this Pulsera, they would just pick it up off the desk, copy and paste it into their document. So I mimicked it for them as well. So if you have kids who are absent, there's no excuses for not doing your work. So there's a backup plan. On the week of the actual sale, I told you guys I do a global citizenship scavenger hunt. So this is kind of the last little culminating thing that we do, is this scavenger hunt. And my kids helped me build this year because we had gone through what global citizenship was all year. And I kept telling them, during the week of the sale, I want you to attempt to check off something in every single box of global citizenship. Attempt something from every category. They're like, I need a list. Could you just help me come up with a list? So, okay, so we came up as a class with most of these options. Some of them you'll probably be able to figure out which one a teacher added. Some of them you can see which ones kids added. So like in the recognition, a teacher added one by me was the implicit bias test. They are super, super cool. They're out of Harvard. And it's kind of like a game for your students. And it gets them to not think about what they really are wanting to test. And it makes some of them uncomfortable. And it's something interesting to talk about. I have a whole activity here where I have them kind of talk about, do you agree with your score? Why or why not? What do you think? What does this tell you about the future? Recognition. So this was one that students came up with. What do you want to be when you grow up? Why? Ask a friend. How did these reasons compare? And a lot of my students ended up choosing this option this year because they thought it was really easy. But then they were like, whoa, my friends chose what they want to do when they grow up for completely different reasons. And they learned about their friends. And they talked about that, how they had no idea that their friends actually really did have different reasons for doing things. Investigation. This is about active investigation beyond just what you ask them to do in the classroom. Look up what's going on in Nicaraguan crisis, the protests. Looking up an artist on the Los Artistas site, that's mandatory for all of my students, but going above and beyond, and if they purchase a Pulsera, look up each one of their artists. Going to a newspaper or searching online to read an article. The communication is all about talking about the sale. This helps me out as well. Telling 3 people about the sale. I don't care who they are, but tell 3 people about it. Starting conversations with someone who you don't normally talk to. Important part is asking someone about their culture and listening about it, listening attentively. And then practicing in Spanish, talking to a native or heritage speaker about their artists, their family, anything they want to. And their favorite part is typically the action. They really like doing stuff, especially this past year. My students outright said it was nice being able to do something again. So purchasing a Pulsera, donating your time to serve as a volunteer. I have a lot of students who can't afford to purchase a Pulsera. And we talk about how it's important that a lot of people do just pay, but there's also people who do need to donate their time. And that's just as valuable as putting money towards something. So I have a lot of students volunteer as well, creating a poster, taking a picture, posting it on social media also is super helpful for me and my sale. So we do this throughout the year. There's 2 on the page, so if you want to print it out, you can just cut it in half and give it to your students. And they just hold on to that the week of sale and track their progress. The last little resource that I want to show you are escape room games. And these are so much fun to incorporate. Have you guys ever been to a breakout room before? Okay, so you're aware of what the concept is. I love escape room games because it allows, I call it failing forward. Your kids can fail at something. They're used to this video game mindset where if they fail and they die in the game, they start over again. They keep trying. And breakout games really allow for that. They can fail, but even failure is moving them forward in the game. So there are 2 different options. Before the pandemic, just about right before the pandemic, we had created a Pulsera physical game where your students are in an airport and they have brought in a bunch of Pulseras and customs is not happy with it. And they have 40 minutes to connect to their next flight and explain to customs why they have all these Pulseras. The Pulsera project actually has kits that can be checked out with the Pulsera sale. So you can request to have a kit with your box. Or if you already have your own materials, you can just print out the supplies and make it yourself. All the supplies here are in English and Spanish. There is a video overview of the game. There is a written overview of the game. It steps you step by step, hide these items, set the lock to this, tells you exactly what you need to do. There's some extra little things, end of the game signs to hold up how long it took them, hint cards, those sorts of things for a physical breakout game. Now, last year, I was really sad because I couldn't use this physical breakout game because we weren't in the room all together and we just weren't allowed to share materials. So I created a digital escape room game too. And this one has 4 different locks, and the 4 locks relate to the 4 different parts of the Pulsera education mission, philosophy, which also relates to the global citizenship competencies. So everything is built in here just like a physical game. In a physical game, everyone's running around the room, it's pandemonium trying to find clues. Well, in this one, you're clicking all over the site to try to find hidden links and hidden clues. And it is challenging. It can be a very hard game. Chris, so it's surprisingly hard. Yeah, they needed some hints. So there is a teacher cheat sheet. So if you need a cheat sheet, I do highly recommend playing it before you do it with your kids, because otherwise they're going to ask you a question and you're going to be like, I have no idea. So there's a cheat sheet that you can play the game. It teaches your students all about fair trade. There's videos that they have to watch. They learn about concepts of bias. So like if they click on the computer, they can see different definitions of bias. But they also see in the upper corner, hey, there's a text message. So that's kind of a little hint. They need to be looking for something else because this isn't the whole clue. They're going to have to connect it with something else. So when they click on the phone, they get the other half. They're going to have to combine these together, and then they can figure out, okay, outcome bias, I wonder what that is. And they can just compare it back to the definitions, figure out which one's the outcome bias. And so it just, you can use this as a review of the Pulsera project after you've already taught these concepts, or I actually use it as an introduction. So my students go into it blind and they learn from this game. So there's a lot built in here. At the very end of the unit, let's see, I can't even find all the links I have up now. At the very end of the unit, I did say that at the end of the sail, I have my students reflect. So this is, at this point, we've been doing Pulsera, we've been incorporating global citizenship since August. And I wanted to share some of my reflections I've gotten. So this is from a student this past year, and he is one who started out and said, I am not a global citizen. I don't even know what one is. I have no idea. And then at the end of the year, he wrote, to me, a global citizen is someone who is culturally conscious of the problems outside of their own space. It's important to realize just how expansive our planet and its people are. Striving to be a global citizen is extremely important because it encourages awareness and respect of other cultures in hopes of better understanding and assisting people around the world. Having knowledge of Spanish is almost essential when it comes to global citizenship because it opens doorways that otherwise would be closed off due to language and cultural barriers. Global citizenship can, of course, include the simple recognitions of issues and who's facing them, and for that reason, I would say I am striving to practice it. So definitely a lot of growth for this student this year. Like Chris said, this was part of my national board certification that I did this past year, and so I was tracking my students and really making sure that they were able to experience growth. The second part of their reflection was, this is a different student this time. And this is one who, he definitely was much more narrow-minded in his thinking. And sometimes he would refer to Hispanic populations with wrong nationalities and all sorts of fun things that we deal with as Spanish teachers. But I loved this because he got it. He finally realized at the end of the year, he did not mark off that he can respectfully discuss his opinions with diverse groups. He mentioned that his biggest strength is now that he can recognize his thoughts and actions are impacted by his culture. That was huge for him to realize that that was why he thought the way he thought. And he noted that I need to work on discussing my opinions because that was true. He needed to work on that. And his favorite part was just about, he liked buying his bracelet. He loved learning about the artist, and he's really proud he supported the project. So my students at the end of the year were definitely showing growth, and they just had this purpose behind their learning. When they had that something beyond what they were doing, when they had a way without traveling. Like I said, most of them thought that in order to be a global citizen, you had to travel, you had to have a passport. A lot of them realized, I can do this from home. This is something really cool that I can be a part of. Most of my students have never left the country, and a lot of them have never even left the state. So it made this a reality for them, and they succeeded, and they did a really good job, all because of incorporating that with the Pulsera project. So those are the resources that I have, and I want to open it up to see if you guys have any questions or any comments. I think, I don't think I can hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Oh. Something was good.
I think it just started working again. Yeah, try it again.
Something was good. I'll interpret that. I guess if you have a question, you can put it in the chat box. Well, thank you so much. Chris, do you have anything else that you need to add?
No, I mean, thank you. Thanks everyone for attending, and that was a great presentation. We're gonna upload this to the website in the next couple of days. I'm going to break it up so that we have like the update and then the actual webinar separate, because I think that would be a useful tool. But yeah, it's a great webinar. Hopefully we get some other teachers to watch in the next couple of weeks. Thank you to Hannah for doing this again and sharing all of the amazing things you put together over the last couple of years. And thanks to everyone for attending. I know that we're all Zoom fatigued still, but it's nice to see some faces that we've worked with before, and yeah, we're looking forward to hopefully a good year. I think we all could use it. So yeah,
Definitely.
Siempre adelante, as we say. All right. Well, thanks again for everyone. Have a great rest of your week and a good rest of your summer. I know that, every day of rest before the school year starts again is going to be important. So I hope you all get some good breaks in. So, all right. Thank you so much.